What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another Lions video. Now, the Detroit Lions have had a couple of practice sessions under their belt. They've gone through OTAs, mini camp, and rookie training camp. And, although it is very early in the process, we have gotten a little bit and a small look at how this team is going to look come 2021. And at this point, there are starting to come out some, projections of the starting 53 or the full 53 players that will be taking the field for the Detroit Lions come week one. Now, I know this is a very early take on this topic, and I know that a lot is going to change from now to the preseason, and especially from now to the regular season, but I wanted to make a video. I wanted to kind of give a way too early 53, a list, kind of a group of players that I think are going to make the roster, and as of right now, how I see this roster coming together for the 2021 Lions. Now, before we get into the video, before we start talking about this way too early 53-man roster, if you are new to the channel and you are enjoying the Lions content, please consider liking the videos and subscribe to the channel. It takes just 2 seconds out of your day to do so. It's quick, free, and easy, and you would be helping the channel out more than you could possibly know. So if you can do that, take those 2 seconds to like and subscribe. I'd be greatly appreciative for it. But with all that being said, without any further ado, let's get right into taking a look at the early 53-man roster predictions.
So look at Anthony Ryder from South Lyon, Michigan, recently selected as the Lions 2020 Fan of the Year. He has a passion about sports broadcasting.
With the 112th selection in the 2021 NFL Draft, the Detroit Lions select Amon-Ra St. Brown, wide receiver, USC. One pride, baby! Yeah!
Now, starting off with the quarterback position, this one was fairly easy. Of course, your starter for this year, at least this year, is going to be Jared Goff, a quarterback that you just traded for, a quarterback that you were paying upwards of $30 million a season, or at least $30 million this season. Jared Goff is going to be your starter. He's been the starter through training camp and mini camp, and I truly do not see a way that Tim Boyle nor David Blau end up taking Jared Goff's spot now, nor by the end of the regular season. Now, I do think Tim Boyle makes it as the backup quarterback. However, I think there is argument to be made that David Blau could beat him out for that second quarterback position. I only think the Lions hold 2 quarterbacks to start the NFL season. I think they only hold 2 quarterbacks, a starter and a backup for week 1. However, I think whatever quarterback doesn't end up making the roster does get put on the practice squad and is kind of hidden away just in case as that, kind of backup, like, oh my God, somebody got hurt. Jared Goff tore his ACL. Jared Goff is down for the season. He's out. I think they keep a 3rd quarterback on the practice squad, but I don't think they keep 3 quarterbacks on the active roster because of the way the rest of this roster is going to play out. Now, as far as running backs, I think the Detroit Lions hold 4 running backs on their roster. They are going to be a very run-first, run-heavy team, and I think they are going to have going to try to have as many talented running backs and talented bodies to kind of disperse the carries and kind of keep everybody as fresh as possible while still using them to their maximum efficiency. Now, DeAndre Swift is likely going to be the starter. He 100% makes the team. Same thing goes with Jamal Williams and Jermar Jefferson. Those 3 are pretty much givens to make the team. Obviously, Jermar Jefferson is a 6th round or a 7th round pick, 3rd to last pick from the NFL draft, so it's no guarantee that he makes the roster. However, I'm pretty confident in saying that he is going to make the roster. And then that 4th running back spot really comes down between undrafted free agent Davis Mills from Nebraska and 2nd-year running back Michael Warren II out of Cincinnati. Now, in my opinion, I think Michael Warren makes the roster over Davis Mills. Michael Warren at Cincinnati had over 3,300 at exactly 3,360 yards and 37 touchdowns in his 3 years at Cincinnati. He was really their workhorse, was a guy that has shown he can have a lot of carries. He's a guy that you can reliably give the ball to over and over and over again. And although I don't think he's going to get a ton of playing time, especially early as the season goes on, as players kind of get fatigued, maybe an injury or 2 pops up to Jamal Williams or Jermar Jefferson, I think you could see Michael Warren step in, kind of replace those guys' role. He's kind of he's a little bit of a shorter back, but he's got definitely a guy with some power, definitely a guy that can push the pocket, move guys forward, and really kind of make yards out of nothing. So I think that ability, I think his production in college gives him the slight edge over Davis Mills, but I think that competition could go either way as well. Now, looking at the fullback, the last player of the backfield, Jason Cabin is the only player at fullback right now. Jason Kmita is the only guy at the fullback position. So he's pretty easily, I feel pretty confident saying that he is going to be the #1 fullback and the only fullback to make the roster, as he is currently the only fullback on the roster. So that's pretty simple right there. Then you move on to the offensive line. Again, I have the Detroit Lions holding one more offensive lineman than they did a season ago. Of course, Decker, Jonah Jackson, Frank Ragnow, Big V, and Penei Sewell are going to be your starting 5 offensive linemen. Those are guys that you really can't cut. You definitely can't cut Taylor Decker. You definitely can't cut Jonah Jackson. You definitely can't cut Frank Ragnow. Definitely can't cut Big V nor Penei Sewell. Not that you would cut any of those guys, but even if they wanted to, they couldn't get rid of those guys because of contract implications. And then I believe the 3 backup players, I have Tyrell Crosby making the roster as a backup tackle, a guy that has shown versatility, a guy that has shown that he can play both left and right tackle at a relatively high borderline starting level. He makes the roster as that security blanket for the tackles. You have Drake Jackson, a center out of Kentucky, to back up Frank Ragnow. He's a guy that definitely should have been drafted. A lot of people looked at him as a very draftable player and a guy that probably should have gone mid-day 3 at the very latest. Fell into UDFA as the Lions somehow were able to sneak away with Drake Jackson. I think he backs up Frank Ragnow just in case with a really quality backup center. And then I do believe Logan Stenberg makes the roster as the last offensive lineman and the backup guard. Now, this offensive line has a lot of versatility. A lot of these guys can move around. Of course, Big V can play pretty much anything but the center position. Tyrell Crosby can play either tackle position. Jonah Jackson can play either guard position. I think Drake Jackson could play any of the interior positions, being guard or center. There's a lot of versatility on this line. Logan Stenberg, really the only guy that can't move around, but I think his potential, his athleticism, and his run blocking ability are going to keep him there just in case. And I think they're going to keep him on the roster so that if one guard does get hurt, you can either slide Jonah across, or if Big V gets hurt, or if Jonah Jackson gets hurt, that's an easy slide in 1-for-1 rotation right there. And you don't really have to move the rest of your offensive line around. I think Stenberg makes it over the other guard out of Notre Dame, but I do think that guard out of Notre Dame ends up making the practice squad as well. I think the Lions hold a lot of offensive linemen. They're a team that is looking to build up the trenches a lot, and they are a team that needs to stay healthy in the trenches in order to have success this season. So very similarly to the running back position, I think having as much depth and as much talent as possible is going to be a big benefit for the Detroit Lions, and they do have the luxury of keeping 8 offensive linemen on the roster if they choose to construct it this way. Now moving on to tight ends, I think the Lions hold 3 tight ends to start the year, that being TJ Hockenson, Darren Fells, as well as Elise Mack. Elise Mack really the only guy there that may be a surprise. He's been making a lot of plays for the first team in training camp. He's been making a lot of plays early with Jared Goff, kind of building that connection. He's really been showing up all throughout OTAs and all throughout minicamp, and I think he makes the roster as that last tight end as they move either Brock Wright or Hunter Bryant to the practice squad. I think one of them will make it and one of them will not. Now, moving on to the wide receiver, this is the one that's going to be the biggest shock. This is the position that really is going to have the biggest fluctuation, and this is going to be the one that I'm most likely to miss on. However, I see the wide receiver position playing out like this. Obviously, Tyrell Williams, Brashad Perriman, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and Quintez Cephas are your guys that are almost guaranteed to make the roster, right? Those are guys that are already being talked about as getting playing time. Tyrell's already probably the one. St. Brown's a rookie. You can't cut him. Quintez is already playing phenomenally and is a second-year guy who's shown a lot of flash and a lot of potential. And then, you have your Brashad Perriman as that rotational deep threat, 2-3 targets a game kind of a guy, potential for a big touchdown here and there. However, I think it really starts to get interesting with the backup and reserve players. I think alongside Tyrell Williams, Brashad Perriman, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and Quintez Cephas, the Lions also select to hold on to Victor Bolden on the active roster to be the backup primary slot wide receiver. I think they hold Khalif Raymond primarily as a backup slot receiver as well, but more primarily as a kick and punt returner for the team. And then I believe Javon McKinley makes it with that last roster spot for the Detroit Lions. If you want to hear about Javon McKinley, a whole video has already been made on it, so you can go watch that. He's a really good player out of Notre Dame, very underrated, very undervalued player in the draft. The Lions were very excited to get him in UDFA. I think he makes the roster with that final roster spot, just barely beating out Sage Surratt, who I believe makes the practice squad as well. Now, with that being said, that means that Geronimo Allison, Tommy Kennedy, Chad Hansen, Damian Radley, and Damian Radley are all cut from the team. I don't see any of them making the practice squad. I don't even know if all of them are eligible for the practice squad, but that is how I see the Detroit Lions wide receiver room working out as of right now. Moving on to the defense with 28 roster spots left. I did use a couple more on the offense than the defense, but in the end, it all worked out fine. Moving on to the defense, the Lions are projected to have a 3-4 defense. I believe it is actually confirmed. The Lions will be running a 3-4 defense under new defensive coordinator Aaron Glenn, and I see the defense laying out a little bit like this. Now, as far as the defensive line, the three guys that will have their hand in the dirt, I believe the starters are going to be Michael Brockers, Levi Onwuzurike, and Alim McNeill. Those are your starting three. You have your nose tackle, you have your 5-tech, and you have your interior pass rusher in Michael Brockers that can play across the line, and I think that three is going to be really, really good to start the season. However, I think as far as backups, I think you see Deshaun Hand make it primarily as Michael Brockers' backup. I think you see John Penisini make it primarily as Alim McNeill's backup for that nose tackle position, and then I think Jashon Cornell makes it with the final roster spot. I think he makes it with that final defensive end spot or final defensive tackle spot, whatever you want to call it. I think he makes it with that final D-line position to primarily back up Levi Onwuzurike. I think all three of those pairings, obviously Brockers to Hand, they're both more pass rusher than run blocker, but they can both play run defense as well. Levi and Jashon Cornell are kind of similar. They're more pass rushers than anything else, but they are really good players across the board. And then Alim McNeill and John Penisini are both primarily nose tackles. That's what they're playing. They're big guys who stop the run and kind of get a little bit of pressure with their raw strength. Now, with that being said, looking at the edge rushers and outside linebackers, the edge rushers, the players that'll be on the outside of the defensive line, of course, being those edge rushers / outside linebackers in a 4-3 defense. Romeo Okwara and Trey Flowers are likely going to be the two starters there, and then Austin Bryant and Julian Okwara are going to be the primary backups. Not a lot of difference here from last year. They're kind of the same players, kind of in the same spot. Lions didn't really address edge rusher or outside linebacker a ton. They didn't really address the role that they want these outside linebackers to play, so the role is pretty similar to a season ago with these same players starting and backing up. Moving to inside linebacker, this is where things get a little bit more, changing. This is where things change a little bit more than the rest of the defense so far. Now, at inside linebacker, I project Jamie Collins, Alex Anzalone, Derek Barnes, Jelani Tavai, and Jalen Hughes-Maven to all make the active roster. That being your 5 starting inside linebackers. Of course, not all of them will be starting, but those are your 5 guys that are going to start the season on the active roster, with UDFA linebacker Tavante Beckett being the last linebacker to make the roster, but making it on the practice squad. Now, moving on to the cornerback, moving on to the secondary, I have Jeff Okudah making it, of course, being the 3rd overall pick a season ago and a projected starter. Amani is going to make the team. Quentin Dunbar is going to make the team. Afedi Melifanu is going to make the team. Mike Ford and Corner Elder are going to finish out the secondary positions. Those are the 6 cornerbacks I think make the active roster. 2 slot guys and 4 boundary guys. I think that's a really good mix. A lot of different talents and a lot of versatility. Okudah, Dunbar, Melifanu could all play the safety position if they wanted to. They could all rotate around, but I think all of them will get playing time and all of them will rotate in depending on packages and schemes. Looking at the safety, I have the Lions holding 4 safeties, being Tracy Walker, Dean Marlowe, Will Harrison. Actually, I have Bobby Price making the roster as a last kind of late in the process guy that kind of shows out in training camp, shows out in preseason with his big frame, athletic ability, and athletic potential. I think he makes the active roster as well, leaving Jalen Elliott and D'Angelo Amos to make the practice squad as well. And I forgot to mention this, but for cornerbacks, I have both AJ Parker and Jerry Jacobs making the practice squad as well. So, that's kind of your practice squad. That's kind of your starting offense. That's kind of your starting offense and defense. That's really the entire roster as of right now. That, of course, leaves 3 roster spots for kicker, punter, and long snapper, going to the obvious choices in Randy Bullock, Jack Fox, and Don Muhlbach, respectively. Now, again, I think this is a really young team. I think this is a very good team, and I think this roster can be really strong in the 2020 season, right? You have a pretty solid running back core. You have a pretty solid quarterback. Your offensive line is stacked and incredibly deep. Same thing with your defensive line. Your secondary is a little shallow, is a little thin, but I think has some real good talent, and I think the practice squad is built up of a lot of players, and actually primarily rookies this season. Of course, I mentioned that David Blau could be kind of a younger practice squad player, a guy that's kind of hidden there just in case. You have Davis Mills, who could make the practice squad potentially. You have guys like the guard out of Notre Dame who could make the practice squad, the UDFA guard. You have probably 2 tight ends that can make the roster, one of them being a second-year player, one of them being a rookie. As far as wide receivers, I think Sage Surratt makes that practice squad, or maybe he makes the active roster and Javon McKinley makes the practice squad. You have guys on the defensive line that could potentially make the practice squad, maybe a Kevin strong. Maybe even, if Nick Williams is eligible, you could put him as your veteran on the practice squad. So I think that's a possibility. As far as linebacker, I think Tavante Beckett's the only guy there that makes it. Secondary is, maybe a little bit biased because secondary is kind of my favorite position to watch, evaluate, and have on the team. I have 4 secondary players, 4 rookie secondary players, in fact, making the practice squad, being A.J. Parker, the rookie cornerback, Jerry Jacobs, the rookie cornerback, Jalen Elliott, the actual second-year safety out of Notre Dame, and then D'Angelo Amos, the rookie safety from Virginia. But with all that being said, that is my 53-man roster. That is the projected players that I think make the active roster and the practice squad going into 2021. Of course, let me know down in the comments below what you think about it. What would you change? Who would you rotate around? Who would you have at different positions? Maybe who would you have starting at these positions and who would you have backing up? Of course, I'd love to hear what you guys think. I know there's going to be a lot of, different opinions, and there's going to be a lot of differing opinions on this and who's going to make the 53 and who isn't. But this is how I see it playing out as of right now, before the preseason, before training camp, and of course before week 1. But with all that being said, that is all for you guys today. Thank you all so very much for watching the video, and until next time, and as always, go Lions!